Welcome to this series where we're going to explore the grim and haunting details surrounding the investigation, evidence, and eventual trial in the heartbreaking case of Abby Williams and Liberty German, known to many as the Delphi murders. This isn't going to be about trying to tell the personal stories of who Abby and Libby were. That is saved for those who loved and cherished them. Instead, we are going to focus on examining the facts, analyzing the investigation, and following the steps that ultimately led to Richard Allen being named the suspect and convicted in their tragic deaths. At the heart of this case are two vibrant young girls whose lives were stolen far too soon. They were cherished by their family and their friends in a town who pulled together and loved them. For their families and for all who knew them, their loss is immeasurable. Their memories will live on, kept alive by those who refuse to let their light fade, even in the shadow of this horrific crime. This series is dedicated to understanding the case while honoring their memory. My goal is to walk through the evidence objectively, to better understand how law enforcement pursued justice in a case that gripped not just the small town of Delphi, but the nation. I will not be giving you information that I assume or conclusions I've drawn. Everything that I share is based strictly on accounts documented by law enforcement, witness statements, and media interviews. We know over time statements have changed and new information has come to light since the trial. But this podcast, for now, in these initial episodes, are going to focus on how things happened then. We will get to where they are now, I promise. I also want to acknowledge the immense respect that I have for the families of Abby and Libby, for the jury, and the legal process that brought us to this point. At the same time, I recognize that this case leaves many with questions unanswered. For some, there's confidence in the outcome, and for others, doubt remains. My intent is not to challenge anyone else's belief or reinforce specific narratives, but to explore the journey of the case, from the very initial searches to the evidence, and eventually the charges and the trial against Richard Allen. Step by step, we'll do this timeline and the actions that have shaped this case. Let us begin. Sunday, February 12, 2017. That morning, Kelsey German picked up her younger sister, Libby, from a sleepover at her friend Allison's house. By the afternoon, Anna Williams, Abby's mother, and Abby joined Libby for softball practice at a local park. The day faded into evening, and Abby stayed over at Libby's house. The girls spent the night laughing with Kelsey, eating pizza, and recording videos. At 3 a.m., Libby would post a Musical.ly video, a snapshot of everything carefree. No one could have known that it would become one of the last memories shared. Monday, February 13th, 2017. The girls began their day as if they had every reason to believe it would be a typical one. It was a day off from school, and they took full advantage, sleeping in after their late night. By mid-morning, they were downstairs enjoying pancakes made by Libby's dad, Derek. Over breakfast, the idea of heading to the Monon High Bridge Trail came up. Kelsey, on her way to work, agreed to drop them off on the condition that they arranged a ride home. At 1:38 p.m., Kelsey dropped the girls off at the trailhead. She watched as they walked towards the bridge. Two friends, ready to enjoy a free afternoon outdoors. At 2:07 p.m., Libby posted a Snapchat of Abby walking along the old railroad bridge. It was serene and peaceful. Just another photo in a day filled with moments like this. But this image would later become famous, marking the point where their day began to unravel. Shortly after, Libby's phone would capture something chilling, and we will get there. By 3:13 p.m., Derek would arrive at the trailhead, ready to pick up the girls as they had planned, but they weren't there. Between 3:30 and 4, Derek is waiting for family to arrive, and he spots an older man in a flannel shirt. He's sometimes referred to as the flannel shirt guy. He asks if this man had seen the girls, and he mentioned he saw a couple down by the bridge, but that was it. A woman who would later be a witness, Cheyenne, and her friend returned to their vehicle and were leaving the parking area. Before leaving, Cheyenne would post a photo to Snapchat, time-stamped at 3:49 p.m., taken on the south side of the bridge facing north. As they prepared to leave, she noticed two people sitting in a car in the parking lot, which she described as looking like a drug deal. It would later be clarified by Tara, a family member, that the individuals in the car were Derek and Tara, waiting for the others to join. Their silence and lack of engagement struck her as odd, as they didn't ask about the missing girls. That came to her later on. Shortly after 4, family members began arriving at the trailhead to join the search. In total, the family members at this point were Cody, Kelsey, Becky, Mike, Tara, Amanda, and others. Becky and Cody had driven the routes that the girls may have taken if they tried to walk home. Cody ended up with Becky as he had just arrived home as she was leaving, and they rode together to the trails. When they arrived, Becky would ask Mr. Mears for permission to park across from the entrance, and as she did so, she noticed two vehicles parked on the roadside, a white car with paper plates and a burgundy vehicle parked in front of it. Eventually, Kelsey and Cody crossed the bridge and continued up the private gravel drive, searching the area around the houses on the south end. Mike Patty was very concerned and unsure of exactly what to do next. He called a law enforcement friend for advice, and his friend told him, ping Libby's phone and call the sheriff's department and get the process started. Mike did that while walking the trails and searching for the girls. In efforts to reach Anna Williams, Abby's mom, Becky would call, but her calls were unsuccessful. By 5, Becky was desperate for answers, so she called AT&T to see if Libby's phone could be tracked, and she was met with limited options. By 5:15, Becky would recall seeing Mike return to the parking area after searching, and moments later, the family decided it was time to formally report Abby and Libby as missing. By 5:20, Becky and Mike contacted law enforcement. Around the same times, Mullen, an off-duty officer, had heard the call over his police scanner. The news was grim. The two girls had last been seen around 2 and had not returned from the trails. Mullins rushed to the sheriff's office, reaching out to family, friends, school resources, and even former Carroll County Sheriff Toby Lesenby to help organize the search. By 5:30, Becky would leave to go search for Anna. She arrived at Anna's house and found no one home, but left a message with a family member who had answered the door, asking Anna to call her immediately. While Becky was doing this, Mike continued to walk towards the town on the trails. During this time, he encountered 2 officers, one from the city police and one from the sheriff's department. The officers had arrived at the trails within 10 minutes of hearing the missing persons report. Mike would describe the situation to them, but no one had seen or heard anything significant at that point. Pat Brown, a family friend, would also step in. He called Mike Patty and offered assistance. Together with Tom Mears and another friend, Pat began searching near Deer Creek and the Monon High Bridge. They combed the ravine, checked the cemetery, looked across access roads. Meanwhile, others would use drones to assist in the search. By 6 p.m., volunteers and additional law enforcement agencies had all joined in. The Delphi Fire Department coordinated the operation, and the rugged terrain and encroaching darkness made their progress slow. Ron Logan, the property owner near the trails, granted searchers access to his land around 6:30 p.m. Teams would continue to search the area surrounding Deer Creek, hoping for any sign of the girls. By 7 p.m., the Delphi Fire Department issued a call for more manpower. Volunteers, briefed on the search plan, pushed forward with flashlights, braving the freezing oncoming temperatures. As the evening wore on, desperation mounted, and by 9 p.m., Mullen would contact Sergeant Blotcher of the Indiana State Police, requesting help in pinging Libby's phone. By 10 p.m., Officer Giancola had arrived at the sheriff's office, attempting to access data on the girl's electronic devices. But the devices were locked, so his efforts yielded nothing. He was frustrated, but he ended up joining the physical search, focusing on the south side of Deer Creek near the access road below the Mononhigh Bridge. By 11:30, the searchers were fighting against time and exhaustion, and it was becoming very cold. Flashlights would scan every corner of these trails, every shadowed crevice near the creek. But the night provided no answers. Despite the official suspension of the search at midnight, the determination of Abby and Libby's loved ones did not waver. Mike Patty, armed with nothing but a flashlight, continued scouring in the cold, rugged terrain. Volunteers would regroup at the Delphi fire station, strategizing their next steps. Requests for specialized search dogs from Kentucky and Illinois were made, adding a glimmer of hope to the otherwise dire situation. Just after midnight, Deputy Darren Giancola continued searching the dense woods. His flashlight would pierce into the darkness, but his visibility was minimal, and the freezing temperatures made every step grueling. While combing the area near the Mononhigh Bridge, something unusual caught his eye. Disturbed leaves revealing patches of bare ground. The trail looked out of place, as though someone or something had recently passed through. Giancola alerted a nearby firefighter to the oddity, but with the conditions worsening, the search was officially called off at 2 a.m. By the morning of February 14th, the town of Delphi awoke to a haunting sense of dread. Volunteers flocked to the Delphi Fire Department, reinvigorated by hope and determination to find the missing girls. A command center was set up, and searchers fanned out across the trails, the surrounding woods, and even the nearby cemetery. Search dogs were deployed, but their attention seemed to focus downstream. Deputy Giancola took a different approach that morning, reaching out to local landowners to secure access to private properties. The urgency to expand the search grew as more volunteers arrived, including Jake Johns and Shane Haygood. The pair parked near downtown Delphi and began working their way towards the Mononhigh Bridge. Their task was to look for a tie-dyed shirt, a potential clue reported missing. It didn't take long before they found it. It was tangled in a tree in the roots along Deer Creek. The discovery of this tie-dyed shirt sparked a flurry of activity. A firefighter confirmed finding additional items, including a pair of black Nike shoes partially submerged in the creek. As these discoveries mounted, the urgency of the search intensified, and searchers began zeroing in on the area surrounding Deer Creek. By late morning, Deputy Giancola joined searchers near the cemetery. He began working his way towards the creek. Meanwhile, Shane Haygood and Pat Brown focused on a suspicious area nearby. As they moved closer to the water, Giancola and another deputy passed a visibly distraught woman. Clothing was snagged in the creek, and a white object drew their attention. It was Abby and Libby. Both girls were deceased, their bodies showing unmistakable signs of violence. Large lacerations to their throats confirmed the brutal nature of the crime. Pat Brown would initially mistake the bodies for mannequins. He would freeze as the devastating reality set in. Overcome with emotion, he turned away and yelled for someone to come and call the authorities. Melissa, a relative of Libby's family, was nearby when the devastating discovery was made and immediately contacted the police. Officers arrived quickly, sealing off the area with crime tape. The location, later referred to as Ground Zero, was a floodplain near Deer Creek, covering roughly 30 square feet. Evidence was collected from the scene, including clothing, a cell phone, and a partially buried .40 caliber Smith & Wesson cartridge. Additional items, such as a sweatshirt and socks, were recovered from the creek with the assistance from the FBI. Every detail added to the growing sense of tragedy surrounding this site. By the afternoon of February 14th, law enforcement notified the families of Abby and Libby that 2 bodies had been found. And although the official identification process was ongoing, it was painfully clear who had been discovered. The confirmation shattered any remaining hope and sent shockwaves through the small town of Delphi. The search was over, but the nightmare was just beginning. As the day wore on, grief would overtake everyone. The loss of Abby and Libby was a blow that struck deeply, leaving the once peaceful town forever changed. People gathered to mourn and support the families united in their sorrow. While the scene was processed late into the night, the questions would loom large. The absence of clear footprints leading from the bridge to the creek left investigators puzzled and added to the growing unease. How had this happened, and who could have done something so unthinkable? The town's grief was profound, but so was its resolve. The search for justice had just begun, and the haunting reality was clear. This was only the beginning of a very long and painful journey to try to uncover the truth. The morning of February 15th would bring a press conference, confirming the worst fears of a grieving town. State Police Sergeant Kim Riley and Carroll County Sheriff Toby Lesenby stood before a full room of reporters, and the weight of the tragedy was etched on their faces. Abby and Libby were gone, and this was no accident. It was murder.
I'm Riley. I'm with the Indiana State Police. I'm the Public Information Officer for the Lafayette Post.
Steve Mullen, Delphi Police Department Chief of Police.
Topalize, I'm Big Carroll County Sheriff.
Basically, we're going to make this, it's going to be short and sweet. We don't have that much at this point in time. Basically, what we've got, we have found 2 bodies. Is that the Sugar Creek?
Deer Creek.
Deer Creek, sorry. In Deer Creek, about a mile east of town. We are investigating this as a crime scene. We suspect foul play. We have not made positive identification of the 2 bodies, so we're not going to be releasing any information on them at this point in time. We've got the Indiana State Police is assisting the Carroll County Sheriff's Department and the Delphi City Police Department in the investigation here. We also have the FBI Crime Scene Investigation Group here out of Indianapolis. And one thing the family asked us to do is to thank all the communities around Delphi and the people here in Delphi for assisting in attempting to locate these the 2 young children that were missing earlier. They just wanted to say thank you to those people, and thank you. They were just wanted to express their gratitude toward the hard work that was done in helping search for these children.
Has the search been called off for these 2 teenagers?
Not officially, because we have not positively identified the bodies at this point in time.
Do you have people still searching the woods and creeks?
We still have, there's still people out looking, but it has been scaled back. Let me just put it that way.
Are the bodies of the 2 cases discovered are those of young female children?
Not at liberty to give that information out as of this time.
Who found them?
I'm not going to say at this point in time.
Why do you believe that there is foul play?
Just the way the bodies were found. That's about all I can say at this point in time.
Were they on water?
They were on the edge of the water, from what I understand. That's about the best I can tell you.
Any outside injuries?
I'm not going to make a comment on that at this time.
What time were they found?
That I'm not sure. 12:15? About 12:15 this afternoon.
Are there any either suspects or persons of interest being questioned at this time?
We have not gotten that far into the investigation, so I cannot comment one way or the other.
Sheriff, you are from this community. Talk about the toll this search and this apparent recovery has taken on your county.
It's been a long several hours. It's played tremendously on the emotions of the community, but the plus is, the positive is the outreach of love and support for the families involved. And I think that's been fantastic. It speaks highly of our community.
You've talked to the families. There's been no identification, but we could hear that this was a sad meeting.
There is some sadness, yes.
How long do you think it's going to take, of what you know so far? How long do you think it's going to take to positively identify?
I can't speak for the coroner. He's the one that will take care of that part. That's not something I can give you that information at this point in time.
How far down was it from the bridge? Downstream.
Probably more than a mile, or less than a mile, really.
I'm going to say somewhere between half and 3/4 of a mile. I'm guessing the road curves back in there, so it's really hard to tell as the crow flies how far it is, but I'm going to guess about a half to 3/4 of a mile back there.
It wasn't that far from where the search started. You mentioned you hours of searching, hundreds of people. So were they not in plain sight in that area, that it would have taken a long time for you guys to find them? Were they
We really don't want to comment on that at this point in time. We don't really want to put out too much information at this point in time. Something I will do, if you follow me on Twitter, I'm going to probably put tweets out approximately every hour on updates. It may be as much as that I'm just going to say we have nothing new at this time. But I will try to do that for at least the next 4 to 6 hours.
How do you suspect, do you presume that these are the two people you were looking for?
I really can't comment on that at this point in time.
Were there any visible injuries or other signs of trauma to the bodies that were discovered?
We're not going to make any comment on that either. I know we're not giving you much. I understand that, but I mean we're at the baby stages of this case. At this point in time, I cannot release really much more information. As soon as I can, I will be more than happy to put stuff out.
Who's the lead investigator?
Carroll County is actually the
Sheriff's
lead.
Office.
Is it fair to say the search has been drastically scaled back?
Correct. I will say that. Yes.
Sheriff, are you classifying this as a homicide investigation at this stage?
It's a death investigation with unknown sources.
Chief, you have not said anything yet. This is your tale. Talk about the impact this has had on your town.
It's had a terrible impact on our community. The people who participated in the search, the people who have participated in all the efforts to try to find the victims in this case are very much appreciated. But I know it's had a terrible effect on our people, and we're grieved that this sort of thing would happen here in our community. I am pleased to see the community come out and help us the way that they have. I'm very pleased to be part of a community that has done everything they have done to help us out in this case.
going forward, you're going to do everything obviously you can to find out who was involved in this? And then earlier when we talked, pretty much all the law enforcement's been holding back tears because these young girls and families and the whole search is really taking a toll on you. So are you going to do everything, exhaust every option just like you did in the search to find out who was involved in this?
Yes.
Anything to say to the community?
Huge thank you.
Yes, thank you for all their help.
Should people in the community be afraid right now, based upon what you've seen and you know?
I think people are smart enough in our community to draw their own conclusions about what they should feel and shouldn't feel. Our people are very smart. We have a very good community, and they are very strong. And they are able to draw their own conclusions about this whole situation, I think, quite successfully. Thank you for the question.
Because, and the reason I ask is I hear the words foul play suspected. And people might be wondering if there's somebody running around this community preying on people that they need to be afraid of.
Mm-hmm. I understand what you're saying.
Should they be?
I do. I think people are able to draw their own conclusions about this situation, and they are smart enough to figure out that what the situation warrants them to think. So that's all we have to say about that.
And you said you scaled back the search completely, so the hundreds of people, even they were coming up a little bit ago, can I offer my help? Can I get back out there? At this point, do you guys not want more people heading out in that area? What's the advice for people who do want to be involved in the search?
They can continue to help in the way we need the assistance at. I am not at the scene. I'm not aware of what's going on out there at this point in time, so I can't really say what we're going to use them for. We may be just telling them we thank you for your help, and we may just be sending them back. So, again, it's we believe what you believe what you can, and then we got to go with the truth that we have. So that's what we're working at.
One final thing. You started off with a statement about finding the bodies. Should we say over again the Ray Creek?
Oh, well, the bodies were found in the Deer Creek area, just east of town, about a mile from the 3/4 to a mile east of the
Freedom Bridge.
Freedom Bridge. I know I didn't help you much there, but
South for Freedom Bridge or the Monon
High Bridge.
High Bridge?
I'm not sure which bridges.
They're two separate bridges.
I know. So
Yeah.
which
Freedom Bridge is on the Heartland, and the High Bridge is
It's
the bridge that's
right.
right up that used to be the river.
So how far from High Bridge? I think that was the last known location.
Within probably 3/4 of a mile or so.
Okay. And how close were they to the area where they were supposed to be picked up by the relatives?
Within that 3/4 of a mile, so.
Okay.
Is that with the flow of the creek or against the flow? Of
It would be upstream.
upstream against the flow of the creek.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
That's really all we got right now.
This wasn't the first time that Delphi had faced heartbreak. Just 3 months earlier, a house fire claimed the lives of 4 young girls, leaving a mark on the town. But this was different. This was deliberate, calculated, and cruel. Abby and Libby were daughters, sisters, friends. 2 young girls with bright futures stolen in this horrific way. The weight of their loss hung heavy. The next day, after the press conference, investigators followed up on a tip that led them to a residence on Bicycle Bridge Road, just outside of Delphi. A search warrant was served and the community held its breath, hoping for a breakthrough. But the search yielded no results and no arrest was made. No suspect was named either. It was another painful reminder of how elusive justice can feel in the wake of an overwhelming crime. But despite the lack of progress, the investigation pressed on. Witnesses who had been on the trails that day began coming forward and recounting their observations. Their statements added pieces to the puzzle, but the picture remained far from complete. Fear was creeping into the streets of Delphi. Parents held their children a little bit closer, and strangers were met with wary glances. The once peaceful trails near the Monon High Bridge became symbols of darkness in a place that no one wanted to tread. The killer was still out there, somewhere, and the knowledge of that fact lingered like a shadow over the town. In the days that followed, the investigation continued, slowly building momentum. Law enforcement's message to the community was clear. They would not stop until Abby and Libby's killer was found. For the families of Abby and Libby, that promise would become a lifeline. Now we're going to discuss some of the witness accounts when they came forward. Each account, though varied, introduced potential leads and suspects, raising more questions than answers. First, we're going to go over the Blair account. Blair visited the Monon High Bridge Trail for a walk on February 13th. Around 2 p.m., she saw a man on the bridge approximately 50 feet away from her. She would describe him as 20 years old, medium build, with brown curly hair, white in complexion and casually dressed. She also noticed 2 girls on the trail. She later identified them as Abby and Libby, passing them as she returned from the bridge. Another detail stood out to her. A vehicle parked unusually at the old CPS building near the trailhead. The car resembled a 1965 Ford Comet with sharp angles. Its position, backed into the lot to conceal its license plate, immediately struck her as odd. Cheyenne was on the Monon High Bridge Trail with her best friend on the 13th as well. She noted seeing an overweight man walking on the trail who did not respond when she greeted him. This lack of interaction made her feel uneasy. A frantic couple stood near a moped. They also struck her as suspicious. Cheyenne initially reached out to law enforcement on the 14th after learning about the discovery of the girls. However, her formal interview did not occur until February 28th, when she detailed her observations and provided photos from her walk that day. 6 months later, in August, the FBI contacted her again, requesting her mother's phone. Investigators were interested because Cheyenne's phone had pinged near the bridge on the 13th. Unfortunately, Cheyenne faced harsh scrutiny online, with many dissecting her photos and everything that she said. She later sent a letter to law enforcement detailing everything she had experienced over the several months. Police would visit her home afterwards, questioning her about her observations as well as the friend who had accompanied her that day. 3 other witnesses, Brianne Wilbur, Anna Spath, and Riley Voorhees. They all reported encounters with men resembling the now infamous image of the bridge guy. First, we'll go over Brianne. Physical description was a man wearing a blue or black windbreaker jacket with a collar, baggy jeans, a hood up over his clothing from underneath. He kept his hands in his pockets, his head was down, and he was walking with a purpose, avoiding eye contact. Her timeline confirmation was Brianne had captured a photo of the Monon High Bridge at 12:43 p.m. and another near the Freedom Bridge at 1:26 p.m. She later confirmed walking past the suspect on her way back towards the Freedom Bridge. Riley Voorhees would say, she encountered the occurrence happened near the Freedom Bridge. She says, she saw the suspect, noticed a man dressed in black, a hoodie, jeans, and boots, and he was sitting on a bench east of the bridge. When she greeted him with hi, the man did not respond, glaring at her and her friends instead. She later said to her sister the man seemed grumpy. Rayleigh described this man as not very tall, with a bigger build, estimating his height no taller than 5'10". And like Brianne, she noted he kept his hands in his pockets. Anna would say she saw an older man wearing blue jeans and a light blue jacket, possibly canvas or faded. His hair was gray with a hint of brown, and he made no effort to show his face. Anna described the man as kinda creepy, though her interaction with him was limited. Adding to the mystery, Terry Wilson would report seeing a purple PT Cruiser or small SUV backed into the CPS building parking lot around 2:10 p.m. Like Blair's account of the 1965 Ford Comet, the vehicle's license plate was deliberately concealed, raising suspicion about its presence. February 20th, the police issued another plea. They asked anyone driving along the Hoosier Heartland Highway on the 13th to recall whether they'd seen a hitchhiker or anyone walking along the road. Perhaps he was out of place or behaving suspiciously. Investigators hoped that someone somewhere may connect the dots. The investigation into the murders had taken another dramatic turn on February 22nd. At a press conference, police would unveil something that would surprise everyone: a brief video and audio clip from Libby's phone. The video showed the man who had been dubbed Bridge Guy walking along the Monon High Bridge. His gait, his clothing, it was all there for everyone to now see. Even more unsettling was the audio. A man's voice, low, somewhat commanding, could be heard saying just 3 words: down the hill.
Guys. Down the hill. Guys.
with information to come forward. That same day, the FBI took over the tip hotline, bringing their resources to bear on the case. The call for justice was growing louder. This wraps up our first look at the case of Abby Williams and Libby German. Today, we've walked through those initial days, how the investigation began, the evidence collected, and of course, the chilling audio and video of the bridge guy that would come to define this case for years to come. As we close, I want to leave you with 3 questions to think about, and if you'd like, please share your thoughts with me down below in the comments. I'd love to hear your answers and what you're thinking after watching this. And you can, of course, always reach out to me at chasingtruth2@gmail.com if you'd like. In the next episode, we're going to dive into the early suspects, search warrants, and the delays that frustrated so many who were watching the case unfold. The twists and turns in the early investigation are critical to understanding how we may have got to where we are today. Thank you for joining me and listening to this, and if you found this episode thought-provoking, please consider sharing it, leaving a review, or subscribing so you don't miss what's next. Until next time, take care, and let's keep seeking understanding in this complicated and heartbreaking case.